Hello, I am Claire Tillyard. No, I'm not. That is my stage name, though.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm Claire Richardson, actually.
Welcome to Parental Podcast. Mentals Podcast. Welcome to the Parental
Who
Mentals
are we?
Podcast.
Who are we? Oh my God, it's been a long 2 weeks.
It has. The holidays have taken it out of us. Anyway, I'm Marcus.
I'm Claire.
And we are going to talk about what today? What are we saying? What are we doing? Oh, when you realise you're neurodivergent.
Yeah.
So for a lot of you might be like, oh, well, I'm not neurodivergent. This isn't my interest. And see you later. That's absolutely fine. But also maybe hang around because you might be. Who knows?
And it's educational and interesting for all, surely.
Yeah, because you might know people. In fact, you definitely will know people who are
and you
undiagnosed.
can support your undiagnosed people better.
So let's go to I basically found out when I got therapy when I was not long after my mum died. I was going through an awful lot and I was having therapy with someone and they were like, have you thought you might be ADHD? Got a frog in me throat.
It's okay.
So basically I had a therapist who said to me, I think you might be ADHD. He didn't use the word neurodivergent. It didn't even exist, that terminology to me back then.
So this was quite a while ago, wasn't it?
Long time ago, like 1920. Not the year 1920. I was about 19 or 20. And then I just parked it and was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense because everyone thinks I'm weird. So I was fine with that. But I was at drama school surrounded by other people who were weird. So it didn't matter really at that point. And it was only after I'd spent my entire adult life failing and succeeding in equal measures, which was a really difficult balance. There was no middle ground. It was just like almost bipolar, which a lot of people do get misdiagnosed with when they've but they've got other things. It seems quite common that lots of people with bipolar have been misdiagnosed. That's not to say that that's everyone with bipolar has been misdiagnosed, but people we've come across on our travels who have been misdiagnosed with bipolar. Anyway, I've gone on an ADHD thing. I mean, it's very clear that I am neurodivergent. So basically I found out then, but didn't really until I made loads of mistakes and then met you. I even worked with autistic kids and ADHD kids for years and still didn't put two and two together because I was just like, well, it's not as an extreme case. I'm obviously more, I can integrate just about. People go, that's the weirdo. When actually...
But he's kind of getting by.
Yeah. So then when I met you and then met William, and then I think this is what a lot of people do, is when their kid's diagnosed, they go, well, I'm like them. Even though he's not my biological son, I could still go, oh my God.
See the similarities.
Yeah. So then I thought I was autistic, which I think I am. I've not got an autism diagnosis, but I sort of identify as autistic, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that what you'd say?
Yeah, you're sort of self-diagnosed, which I think is really helpful and really valid. So there's that. I
have tried to, but it takes so long, and then I had to fill out a form, and then I didn't fill the form out in time, and I sent it off to them, and then they sent it back and went, oh, you weren't on time. So then I gave up. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, which is helpful, isn't
Not
it?
bitter.
When your child gets diagnosed, in this country, the NHS, I think it maybe is still their process. I don't know whether it's for their process for everybody, but they send you on this course just with kind of basic information that you get about your autistic children. And I remember the lady pointing to everybody, all the parents in the room, and she said about 50% of you are also autistic or might find out that you're autistic in later life.
Because it's genetic.
Because it's genetic. But she didn't kind of labour that point at all. It was a very flippant comment, and I remember thinking, oh, okay, that's an interesting thing to say.
Back then it was only like 7, 8 years ago, but that was still quite controversial, really.
I think so.
Concept.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the first that I had heard of it, and that was because my child had just got a diagnosis. So then for me, it's only in recent years that have I even suspected it about myself, which is absolutely mental.
Well, this is the thing, when you play it back, when you play your childhood back, when you play your teenage years back, when you play your early adult life back, it all makes sense.
It makes so much sense, and there should be an instant thing when you take your child to the doctors and you get referred for the diagnosis process that you should fill out all the questionnaires, that they should ask the parents if they want that support too. Is, obviously that's not going to happen because it's the NHS, but I think ideally that's what should happen because we now know that it's genetic, and
And the thing is, when people
it's all just making so much sense.
Yeah, and so many people now say things, like, oh, well, it's becoming more, everyone's got ADHD, everyone. It's like, because now we're understanding it's genetic. Now we're understanding, oh, hang on a minute, if A's got one, then B and C, at least one of them has.
And then it's run through your family.
Yeah, but because most neurodivergent people are attracted to the personalities of other neurodivergent people, they end up in relationships with and friends with other neurodivergent people. So therefore that becomes a norm.
It all seems normal.
So it all becomes normal.
And that's kind of, so there's a lack of self-awareness because you're not being shown a mirror. And you know what they say about relationships, like for me and you, I very much think we're a mirror to each other. We're showing up our own behaviours and you can see those directed back at you. And until you have that experience, like your psychologist said to you, have you thought about being ADHD? But then you were just blissfully kind of moving through life, not thinking about it very much because you didn't really have a reason to.
Well, at that point I was dealing with the trauma of mum dying, so it was I didn't have time to process the fact I was ADHD because I was ADHD, possibly autistic, and processing is a problem. So at that point I could only have one priority, like go to drama school for 10-12 hours a day, do all of the stuff that meant, wearing tights and doing ballet. Not this guy. I mean, I did, but I mean, Jesus Christ, no one should have had to see that. And, having to do all of those things whilst processing my mum dying, whilst processing my dad moving on very quickly with somebody else, and trying to kind of swallow all of that. ADHD, there was no room for that, understanding. And the thing is, I think this is something that probably is much more processable in later life because you've got more experience and understanding of what it means to be neurodivergent.
Yeah, and now you've said that, I realise that that's exactly what happened to me for different reasons because I was dealing with a child being diagnosed. I was a single mum at the time. There was so much going on in my life. It was a really stressful, difficult period for years and years and years. I didn't have the time to kind of reflect on myself.
No.
Because I had to just survival mode cope with what was going on in front of me.
Well, it was only, I think, because I was going, oh my God, me, I am. And you were like, well, yeah, but hang on a minute. Are we both? He's like, well, probably because they all end up in relation, And
I think actually what the turning point was, now I've just realised, I've just hit on it, was mental health issues. So when you were struggling with mental health issues, it made me think about you being neurodivergent more, and I remember us kind of talking about that a little bit more. And then when I had postnatal depression, I remember starting to link how my brain was working with, is that neurodivergency? And then I was thinking about potentially other children being neurodivergent, and so it was just this big spiral effect, and I was able to have the space to have some self-awareness, and just being in this relationship in such a kind of safe space, and being so open about mental health issues that you were with me.
But the thing is, I think one of the early things that made you sort of reflect, and this was obviously way before you went on this journey, was we used to go to places and I'd be like, you're different. I mean, at that time, I wasn't necessarily very far along on this journey. So when I was saying to you, like, oh, when you go to this place where you know these people well, but that's not you, you don't act like that and we'd not known each other for too long, I guess, at that stage, did we? But that was...
clocks it straight away.
Because of my pattern spotting abilities, because that's another neurodivergent thing. Like, oh, I can spot patterns going on here. And I spotted that you were not your usual self every time we were around different people, but specifically, in certain environments, you put on this mask, which seemed quite comfortable, and you seemed like you were having fun. But then we'd come home and you were like,
this is wanting to stare into space, have no one talk to me, be calm, zone out. This is my happy place.
Yeah, it's hard for anyone who's listening, but Claire is just drifting off into
giving you a taste of my unmasked self right there.
Yeah, I mean, that must be hard living with someone like me and Fleur and Artie and William that ask a lot of questions.
It is hard. Yeah. I saw a video, this amazing woman was talking about what free time is to her, and she was, and I never thought of it like this before, and I thought free time to a lot of people is going and doing something nice. It's meeting your friends, it's meeting up with family and all getting together and visiting somewhere. That isn't free time to me. That's part of my very hard work to survive kind of time. Free time is doing absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing, in my bed, in my sensory joy of comfort of a cover, 10 covers, no one speaking to me, silence, me not speaking. That's free time.
Oh, 100%. But that's what I said to you. We were having a conversation last week about the hardest thing about giving up my old life and moving in with you and your two kids and then Artie, which so then I then by proxy then all of a sudden went from 0 kids to 3 very fast. And I had to give that up that was just my life. That's all I did. And that's all probably a lot of single people do, is they just have that free time to just go, oh yeah, and just enjoy doing nothing. I mean, mine consisted of me playing PlayStation until 4 o'clock in the morning. But, you know, like I think everybody has as you get older, the socialization thing kind of drifts away and you just want your own space, don't you? Because I think we're all a bit burnt out by the time you get to 40. It's like, oh, I'm burnt out. But it's nice to see people.
And you've had children.
But again, this is a neurodivergent thing, though. Like, it's nice to see people on my terms. You know, I don't really, you know.
When I fancy it.
Yeah, and I flake out. We both flake out of things a lot, also neurodivergent. You know, like you have, when people say to you, oh, do you want to go here? You're like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then every day as it gets nearer to that, you're like, I don't want to do that anymore. Why did I say it? And then you're just like, oh, do you know what? I can't come. Why? I just can't. Leave me alone. You know, and that's the thing.
It's harder to be... now when I used to live in that place where you were saying I was putting on a mask when I was in certain situations, it wasn't a mask. That was kind of just how I lit. Obviously it was a mask, but I mean, I lived within that mask and I didn't really have a different place to go to because I wasn't necessarily unmasked in any situation. But now I am. It's so much harder to put it back on.
But this is the thing, being with me, you feel free enough to be yourself and that sounds really arrogant, but I mean, what I'm saying is since we got together, you have found this freedom and an ability to just shout at me, just be yourself. I'm joking. We are in a situation where you are free and you can be yourself. And if you do have a meltdown,
both of us
and
to
shout
be free,
at me, and I have a meltdown and I shout, we end up going, shouldn't have done that. And you go, I know, I'm really sorry.
And we get over it. Yeah. So it's harder. We don't have to mask all the time. We don't mask with each other.
We don't really mask ever. I don't mask in front of you. That's probably what we need to maybe do more of.
No, we don't, mate. But it's harder to put it back on, I think. And so almost like when you realise you're neurodivergent because you've maybe gone through that process with your children or you've met someone and that's how your realisation comes to you and it's later in life. There's so many pluses and so many positives to it. And I would always advocate for understanding yourself as much as you possibly can. However, I do think it makes it really hard to function in a lot of ways in the way that you did, because
you can't function the way that you did.
Once you've taken back those layers and realised that isn't who you are, it's great because you just then be in your authentic self and you're being who you are, but it's really hard when you have to go into situations.
It's relearning to be an adult, basically. Relearning to do everything again. It's been normal, all these normal things, you know, like every single football team I ever joined, like I didn't play to the standard I could have played at because I didn't ever want to join a new team. I just hated it. I was so comfortable and I was just like, oh, why don't you try? And I'm like, no. And then eventually I just probably, even my performances dwindled again because of being neurodivergent, because I was always worried how I was being perceived. Did people like me? Constantly getting rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD, that's a new one for you, you know, and that's why I wouldn't go to these things as well, because I was worried how I was being perceived. And I think when I met you and I learned that was actually all just in my head, that was quite a lot to also deal with and process. So I almost gave up football because it was like, right. Whereas now I'm ready to kind of maybe join a vets team, and I'm just like, I just know that I'm going to go there. People are going to think he's weird. I'm going to get to know some people. I'll make 1 or 2 friends. And that's just always been how it works. Now I know that that's just my neurodivergent behavior and how people either accept me or don't accept me. I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, I think it really helps you to have, well, that's what I've found, is that it helps me to have so much more compassion for myself. It's all the things I've just been rubbish at as a human being, as an adult or as a mum, or, you know, I'm just the most disorganised mum ever, and I fly by the seat of my pants and forget things all the time and
doing piles,
you know, all these things that are kind of the negative parts of me that I used to feel really bad about and beat myself up about, as much as I still do. But I can find compassion on some days. I try to.
But equally, all of the positive things about you, all the amazing things that make you unique in who you are, and you're an artist and an actress and a model and all these things, are improved by your neurodivergence as well. So
yeah, and I'm starting to be able to discover them now. I understand like who I am and what makes me tick and what makes me find joy and be fulfilled. So,
and again, what we were speaking about in another podcast, when we go and get involved in situations and try to intervene when kids are getting hit by their parents, why do we always say that? But you know, like, this is the thing, we are different to lots of other people, and I think that can be hard in itself, but you can celebrate it, and you can actually, when you understand it, you can celebrate it, and you can find the bits that are negative and are positive and try to sort of manage them differently to how you did when you were. And again, this is the thing why sometimes it appears as mania and, you know, the opposite, because it's like, oh my God, look at all this success, I'm so happy, and all of this struggle, I don't process it and I'm not doing very well. So I think for a lot of people, those extremes almost feel bipolar. But the fact of the matter is being neurodivergent, mate, it is like living in the extremes, all of the extremes. There isn't a lot of middle ground. So
yeah, and I think that's why, or there's lots of reasons why, if anybody said to me, oh my God, you know what annoys me so much about when people criticize us putting labels on children or us putting labels on ourselves, it makes me really upset, because I just think it doesn't matter whether it's a word or a description, whatever it is, if it helps you understand yourself and be able to find support where you need it, and find the things that you enjoy that are true to yourself or your people. Why is that ever a bad thing?
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, self-diagnosis is so valid, and why diagnosing children is so important.
Because then that's taken a lot more seriously. I think as an adult, you
because you can find the support, and those children then understand themselves. So if there's ever parents that are and ahhing, or, you know, I've got friends where I've kind of tried to steer them into the way of thinking, or that their children might be neurodivergent, and I've done that because I feel like it's so important, and it has changed my life to try to understand that I might be neurodivergent.
But they are on board with it now, and it's changed their life as well. Like, that's the point, is when you can be kinder to yourself. You can stop trying to do things that would be suitable for neurotypical kids that just neurodivergent kids cannot process. Like, if you stop doing those things and all of a sudden just slightly change tack, that can change your life. Because you just kind of, you know, like, again, when you're trying to constantly discipline a child that cannot receive that discipline, you're just banging your head against the brick wall. And actually, in many cases, as they get older, that can turn into being pushed away and all sorts of other things. So I think for us, we were quite lucky that, my mum clearly knew I was different, and my brother were both. I mean, my brother is also on the same journey now. He's 10 years older than me, and after I started speaking about it and talking about genetics and started talking about mum, he was kind of like, oh my God. And I was like, mate, you are like a crazy ass engineer. We're the complete opposite ends of the spectrum, but we're both on it. And I think, you know, like, for all of us on this journey, and when you do get on it, it can be scary, it can be hard, but you know what, dear God, is it just you just feel a little bit nicer and a bit kinder to yourself and to each other, and treating, you know, as soon as we see someone that we suspect might be, you can almost help them out. And again, like we're talking about kids we see in public, we help other adults out that we see that are struggling, because we have that compassion, and we're just like, we know what it looks like to have a meltdown in public. Or
and I think it's just this, you know, we've talked about kind of energy and being authentic in previous podcasts, and I think it's never ever a bad energy to be vibrating on, and that you're looking at people with compassion and kindness and trying to understand them. I think we go at that in our lives now, in terms of, you go to your workplace that you sometimes work at, and you've talked about it, and you've actually helped people realize that they might be neurodivergent. And it's just never, why is it a bad thing? And I saw a man do a video, he's got like millions of followers, I can't remember his name, young, he looks like early 20s, and he said, I've been getting loads of people asking me questions as to whether I'm neurodivergent, and I'm not ashamed of it, and I'm going to talk about it today.
Has he got long hair?
Clearly, I know you mean. It's clearly the first time he talks about it that I came across his video. And it just shouldn't be anything to be ashamed of, and it's not just a label. It's just so important to be able to understand yourself, to be the best wife you can be, to be the best mother you can be. You know, I think it has transformed how I parent, knowing all of this stuff. And even if it is just what I suspect, even if it's just something that I think about myself that isn't true. Why does it matter?
No.
It doesn't matter at all.
I mean, the thing is, if you treat yourself...
I'm not doing any harm to anybody.
No, if you treat yourself as someone who is neurodivergent, and if you treat your children as if they're neurodivergent, the only thing that is ever going to happen is they're going to be treated with more compassion. You're going to be kinder to yourself. It's never going to be a negative, because you're not being more harsh with them. You're not putting more expectancy on them. If anything, it's a much more free way of living, you know, because if you're an ableist, you're like, well, I expect this of myself. I expect I can do this. I should be able to do this. It's like, yeah, but if you just take all that away and you just do your best, and whatever happens, you know, and some people will be like, yeah, well, you look at, say, the Serena Williams and Venus Williams, if they'd never been pushed and so on and so forth. And I get that. There is more than one way to bring up a child, definitely, especially a neurodivergent child. However, if you treat them with kindness and just not put any expectation on them, and your friends and your relatives and everybody else, I remember you saying to me about someone I was struggling with, like, just accept them for their limitations, which is a massive life-changing sentence to me. Like, when you said accept them for their limitations, I was like, oh my God, they aren't capable of being what I'm expecting them to be, because I'm putting expectations on them that I expect of me. And it's actually like the most ableist thing. I didn't know necessarily how on the spectrum I was at that point, so I wasn't being kind to myself. So I in turn then looked at myself and was like, I need to accept myself for my own limitations.
And it helps when you think about the children in that way as well, doesn't it?
Of course, accept
and
them.
removing all those social norms. And I think what we're talking about in terms of those expectations are normally what society expects children to behave like, or be able to do, or participate in. We remove all of that from ourselves now. We literally don't conform to any of those expectations, really, apart from, you know, especially in our household, we keep it very kind of free and low demand and low expectations, because that's what works for us and our children.
I guess the only thing,
it doesn't work for everybody.
Everything is free in our house unless you're impacting other people's experience with negative behavior, which sounds like an absolute wanky sentence, and we've never actually written that down as a policy, but that's just how it is. We just, you know, you can be having a meltdown, you can be around us having a meltdown, as long as you're not taking out on others. And, you know, like, and it's one of those things that for us, we encourage the kids to understand that it's okay to have a meltdown, and also that we have meltdowns. And we spoke about that in another episode, meltdowns. But, you know, like, that is a massive part of being neurodivergent, is not being able to process emotions. And as a family, we're all here for each other to let it out or not let it out, and share it with us or not share it with us. And
show ultimate forgiveness and compassion when it does happen and it does go wrong. And that's what we can do for each other, because we understand.
Yeah, well, I said in my speech about forgiveness, and, you know, like, that was the biggest thing for me. Like, obviously, you don't always forgive me for some things for a while, but you do eventually, and that's the main thing. And vice versa. I mean, I think I'm incredibly forgiving very, very quickly, but that's because I've normally...
I don't do everything wrong.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, I think it's gone all over the place, this one again. But I think if you have any questions, hit us up in the comments on YouTube, or I don't even think you comment on Spotify. But yeah, just find us on Ticking a Talk. Jesus Christ. But come and, you know, send us a message, talk to us. We are very communicative.
And give us your experiences also, because we are not preaching, and we don't have all the answers.
We've got it all wrong. Tell us that. We don't mind. I'm happy to be told I'm wrong. It's another thing that I've learned being neurodivergent. I did used to think I was right about everything, and then when I realized I wasn't, it was like, oh, okay, it's quite healthy.
Just have to accept, you have to accept that, don't you?
And it's quite a wonderful place to be in. So yeah, let us know. Are we right? Are we wrong? I don't know. What experiences are you going through? Are you worried about your kids? Are you worried about yourself? Ask us. Claire's on Instagram. I'm on, or we're all on everything. Just find us. Claire Tillyard, Marcus J. Richardson, Parental Mentals. We're here. We're there. We're everywhere.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.